Well, hello and welcome to this Premier League fixture, the Sunday afternoon fixture, of course, between Spurs and Newcastle, live from St James's Park. So, of course, Newcastle returning to the Premier League over the summer, and rather at the end of May, after winning the Championship last time out, and we see the first home game for them this season, like I say, at St James's Park, where they take on Spurs. So, we've just begun here in the northeast. And already we see throw for the home side. Hello once more, sorry about the wee delay there, greetings if you are indeed just joining us, as I bring you coverage via commentary of today's game, at least the early kickoff, the lunchtime kickoff between Spurs and Newcastle, live from St James's Park in the northeast, on of course the home side's return to the top flight. So Newcastle United, of course, as ever in the famous black and white stripes, the Magpies kicking from right to left this first half, and on the other side, of course, Spurs in their change kit today. Their navy blue change kit, white shorts and white socks. So, once again, if you just joined us, apologies for the slight delay in proceedings here, but I will certainly be with you for the next 90 minutes or so, bringing you live commentary coverage of Newcastle versus Spurs here across the early kickoff of this Sunday afternoon in the UK. And I'll just give you some team news if you've missed it from earlier. So, the starting 11 for the home side, Newcastle United, today, of course, under the tutelage of Rafa Benitez, sees Elliott in goal, the new signing Lejeune at centre half alongside Kieran Clark, the former Villa man, and Dummett sits in at left back, and on the opposite side you have, of course, Manquillo, the former Liverpool man on loan from Atletico Madrid, of course, was at Sunderland last season, so he's switched his allegiances rather abruptly, similarly to Yedlin a couple of years back. So that's the back four: Manquillo, Lejeune, Clark, Dummett, and Elliott, of course, in goal behind them. So Shelvey anchors the midfield alongside Isaac Hayden, the new signing from Borussia Dortmund, Marino, and Christian Atsu out on wide on the wide left for the Magpies. Meanwhile, out wide right is Matt Ritchie. So quite an exciting looking midfield, certainly there for the hosts. Of course, Dwight Gale is otherwise the solitary man up front, leading the line for the hosts. So Dwight Gale up front this afternoon. And returning to the action now, so Christian Atsu just looking to navigate his way inside, but the Spurs player was across rather adeptly to intervene, and now Harry Kane can break free. He's done very well to hold off for Lejeune, the new signing, the Frenchman. In fact, it's Manquillo retreating, like I say, the former Liverpool man. He's played under Rafa Benitez before, of course. Now, in a second, I will have the Spurs lineup with you as well. Apologies for the delay in doing that. Of course, we're already underway here. So, meanwhile, we just see the replay of Lejeune there intercepting the ball away as Sissoko mounts the latest attack for the visitors. And indeed, Paul Dummett appears to have pulled up with hamstring strains. So that's the latest in proceedings here. Paul Dummett, the Welshman, pulling up rather sheepishly, or gingerly rather, with a hamstring tag, and already it looks like Rafa Benitez is going to go to the bench and bring on Lascelles, the captain of last year. So just filling you in there, indeed it does look like Paul Dummett will play no further part. We saw this in the game yesterday actually involving Watford and Liverpool. Daryl Yarmart went off after only a couple of moments for the hosts. So Paul Dummett, as I can see on my picture here, limping off rather gingerly. He's going to be replaced instantly by Lascelles for Newcastle. So an early injury blow for the hosts, and it's really taken the pace out of the game, you might say as well. Of course, shortly we will resume the match, but never good to see a player leave so early on, just 7 minutes in here. Paul Dummett having to go through what looks like a hamstring strain. And meanwhile, it's Eriksson over the Spurs corner. So, meanwhile, return to the action. Spurs have a corner, and Eriksson will whip this in fact, to go short. Back to Ben Davies, the Welsh fullback. For Spurs, we've just seen one Welsh fullback depart, but Ben Davies still very much on the pitch, and looks like he'll be the number one man, at left back at least for Spurs this season. That is of course if Danny Rose, and particularly after what we've seen in the last couple of days, looks like he will definitely leave. So if Danny Rose leaves, we're going to see, I'm sure, Ben Davies start most games for Spurs this season. And it looks like a reshuffle across the back four instantly for the hosts. Lascelles going to centre half, albeit it was Paul Dummett starting at left back. So it looks like Kieran Clark, the nominal centre half, is slid into left back there. So just to recap with you, Newcastle United losing Paul Dummett after just 7 minutes here to injury, which has forced the change, seeing the hosts bring on Lascelles for the Welshman, and that sees Kieran Clark move across here to left back on the near side, and centrally is Lejeune, Lascelles, and right back Manquillo. So the former Sunderland man Manquillo beginning this match, and straight away, as I start to relate the change there, and apologies if you're just joining us and trying to catch up on things, but just as I was explaining there, so it looks like Kieran Clark is now playing left back after seeing the departure of Paul Dummett injury, and just after that we saw Sissoko with a chance, and meanwhile has Kyle Walker-Peters at right back for Spurs. That's the other one to come to grips with. The very similarly named Kyle Walker-Peters beginning at right back for Spurs. So that's the shock news, if you like, for the visitors in terms of their team news, as we meanwhile see the opposite fullback Ben Davies emerge with the ball. So Kyle Walker-Peters, the young Spurs fullback, deputising, of course, for Kieran Trippier, who many see as the natural replacement, of course, to Kyle Walker. So there's one definitely to make probably a mental note of, not to be confused with the man who's recently departed to Manchester City, of course. This is a different Kyle Walker. In fact, it's Kyle Walker-Peters, to be exact, with the hybrid name, the hyphenated name, as we see Christian Atsu on the deck here for Newcastle United. It's a throw to be taken by Ben Davies for the visitors, launching it long, and it's Isaac Hayden here back to Lejeune, the debutant, and again Davies, neither side really getting a grip or coming to terms with the game here, at least in terms of retaining the ball. It's looked a little sloppy thus far, but Christian Eriksen does bring it under nicely with his chest, and Alderweireld can now emerge out from the back four, comes short to Moussa Dembele, anchoring the midfield trio there for Spurs, alongside Dyer and Eriksson. Ali slightly more advanced, incidentally. So just to confirm the Spurs team news, I didn't earlier, so apologies for the delay on that, but the main news is the shock inclusion, if you like, of Kyle Walker-Peters. So now let's not confuse the two. So this is not the man who's just departed to Manchester City, like I say, but it's indeed a youngster with a very similar name. Kyle Walker-Peters starts at right back Now, otherwise at centre half is, as ever, Jan Vertonghen, next to him, Alderweireld, and next to him, further to the left is Ben Davis. So Toby Alderweireld and Vertonghen, Davis, Kyle Walker, Peters, and then of course Moussa Dembele in midfield, Christian Eriksen, Eric Dyer, and then Dele Alli slightly more advanced. Moussa Sissoko gets a start instantly, again another former Newcastle man, and ahead of him, of course, as ever, is Harry Kane. So more or less a settled Spurs side, one we certainly grew accustomed to seeing week in, week out last season. And meanwhile, Dele Alli put in very nicely with a weak clip ball. I believe that was Dyer from a deep line midfield position was able to find. In fact, it was Eriksen coming short from the pass from Dembele, and Dele Alli hooked the ball back, looking for Kane. With that telepathic understanding we saw in evidence so often last season. And they've got a corner out of the resulting ricochet off the Newcastle players. And here we go with Davis swinging it in on that exceptional left foot of his. But it's come to nothing with Moussa Sissoko involved in a near post tussle. But the ball eventually came off the Frenchman and out for a goal kick. So a relatively temperate beginning here at St James's Park. Both sides very much still feeling each other out. It's not been quite the frenetic start we of course saw at the Emirates, or indeed even yesterday with Watford hosting Liverpool. But a lively opening all the same at St James's, and it's great to see the famous ground soaked in sunlight really bask in the yellow gleam here. So I hope my feed is coming through adequately for you guys there, and I do appreciate you obviously chiming in. And just a heads up once again, guys, so this is only audio. Instantly, I'm obviously relating events verbally only. There is no footage to be expected here, I'm afraid. But by all means, do tune in if you do happen to be out and about, perhaps, or looking for some sort of coverage of the game. I hope this is the second best thing after, of course, actual live coverage, picture coverage of any Premier League match for that matter. So, meanwhile, just returning to proceedings, and we see, meanwhile, late tackle from Lejeune coming across, what appeared certainly quite late. In fact, it's another Spurs corner. Just to bring you up to speed here, it's the second of the match already, and this time Davis goes short to Eriksen with that lovely right foot of his, and he's going to hook it back enticingly, but Elliott was quick off his line and gathered rather unopposed in the end, the Newcastle keeper. Very experienced now, of course, Steve Elliott in the Newcastle goal. You'll, of course, remember him from a couple of seasons back, for sure. Did very well, in fact, during that season where Newcastle did get relegated a couple of years ago, and perhaps unfairly went down with them. But he's managed to retain his spot in the side, and alongside the likes of Shelvey and indeed Dummett, who's since departed, by the way, already in this game through injury, if you're just joining us. They've managed to steady the ship and come straight back up at the first time of asking, of course, Newcastle. And meanwhile, Dwight Gale had just gone down under the challenge of a retreating Moussa Sissoko, but nothing has been given. The linesman with an arm outstretched here, pointing a flag. It was a quickly taken free kick. Great ingenuity shown, at presence in mind from Shelvey with a nonchalant pass along the floor, the outside of his boot. Look at that. Curls into the path of Dwight Gale, who instantly went down under the challenge. In fact, it was the young Walker Peters with the challenge on the former Crystal Palace player Dwight Gale. So a cry for a penalty there. To be fair, a modest appeal, if that, from the Newcastle players. They weren't really too hell-bent on making sure the referee did award the penalty there, but Dwight Gale nonetheless breaking free with after a quickly taken free kick from Junter Shelvey, and found a yard of space. It was a very clever ploy shown by Shelvey, the promising English player, of course. It's a very big season for him, the former Liverpool man. You could argue it didn't really work out for him there on Merseyside, and like so many players in recent times at Liverpool, he's seen his career move on. He's had to suffer the agony of relegation last season, but he's since bounced back with the club. So Perez, we know that's a lovely take by Jose Perez, the Spaniard, and we speak of Manquillo, we speak of Benitez. Another player I've not yet really mentioned because he's been so quiet thus far is Jose Perez, again another who suffered relegation with Newcastle a couple of years back and has since been rejuvenated with another chance, a second pop at the big time with Newcastle, and he was played in there very well, only to have his space closed down within seconds. So meanwhile we see Walker-Peters again under pressure. The ball goes out of play, and he's done well so far, Kyle Walker-Peters. So just to once again remind you, this is not Kyle Walker with an immediate return to his former club. It's in fact a different Walker, this time a Walker-Peters, but the first name is the same. Kyle Walker-Peters deputising for Kieran Trippier this afternoon at right back for Spurs, and it's another otherwise very, very familiar back four with Tongan, Alderweireld and Ben Davies at left back for the visitors in their changed navy blue kit, which is effectively really a direct reversal of their home kit, and of course the new kit manufacturer this season. So there he goes. Perhaps you could argue he looks a little bit similar to Mbappe. Walker-Peters, albeit in a very, very different position, at of course a very different stage in his career, but it's great to see the man make his debut on the opening day. No pressure there for a man of such a famous name, if you like, and Kyle Walker-Peters. So meanwhile we see Ben Davies here emerge at fullback, left fullback with the ball. He's come short to Mr. Sissoko, continues the overlapping run outside, and Dele Alli has played it inside, but his touch lets him down. Eric Dyer meanwhile covering and is collected by Dwight Gale. No foul given, so it's a throw for Newcastle United, and Javier Manquillo will come over to take the throw here. Of course, the former Liverpool man, Javier Manquillo. So, if you're just joining us, hello and welcome. This is Stefan reporting for Stefanzine, this time with a live commentary, bring you the coverage at least by way of an audio stream via YouTube today. So welcome if you've just indeed joined the party. It remains nil here, of course, between Spurs and Newcastle United. The Magpies announcing their return to the Premier League. Let's see if they can really announce it in style with at least a point today. It would really put the fans at ease, you feel, after all the conjecture and speculation and unease at the club around Rafa Benitez's situation. Is he staying? Is he going? Does he want to leave? Will he be sacked? And so forth. Certainly a side have acquitted themselves well thus far in the game, presently sitting back and absorbing a bit of sustained possession from the visitors. Moussa Dembele, as ever, dropping back to collect the ball. Alderweireld, meanwhile, sprays it out wide to Jan Vertonghen, and we see already the full width of the pitch utilised by Spurs as Davies takes up an advanced position. It was Sissoko who was holding the space momentarily. As Christian Atsu, the former Everton man, looks to hold up the ball, but to no avail. So once again, I just want to keep you guys reminded this is only an audio commentary stream. But I will, in any case, be keeping you up to speed with happenings at St James's Park, as indeed they do unfold here. So it's Walker-Peters this time with the decision after the challenge came in from Karen Clark. Rather needlessly followed through on the young fullback there, Karen Clark, the experienced Irishman, formerly, of course, of Aston Villa. And he instantly has reverted to the left back. So beginning the game at centre half, the Irishman has since come across the near side to fill in at the left back, and the reason he's done so is that Paul Dummett, the Welshman, has gone off prematurely, just after a couple of moments, in fact, minutes of this game, succumbing to a hamstring injury. So he'll play no further part, and it's Lascelles who's come on, meanwhile, at centre back, which means Karen Clark's moved out to left back, and meanwhile, just apologies there to interrupt myself, but Harry Kane latching onto the free kick from Eriksen, almost there. It was swung in from the right-hand side with another delicious ball from the Dane. Really, that is his forte, if anything. Well, above anything else. He's got a varied skill set for sure, but the set pieces he manages to dispatch are always pinpoint. Clark, meanwhile, back to his goalkeeper in Elliott. And that's the first half chance, instantly, for Kane, really, of this match. Looking to profit off the set piece from Eriksen, but not on this occasion as we take up proceedings once more. It's Sissoko looking to pounce on the ball, and that's a late tackle from the Lalli, who since clatters into him after the ball, and there's a wee bit of a friendly coming together, let's say, for two players who look rather similar in appearance, Lascelles and Ali. Doesn't look too friendly as it does indeed turn out. Ali has that to his game, doesn't he? A bit of menace, a bit of tendency to engage the player at the very least, but really nothing of note to report on here. Merely coming together between the two and a few light words exchanged. Lascelles, of course, as I did mention previously, the captain of last season, and Christian Atsu, meanwhile, another player within this Newcastle side, joined this year, having previously, like I say, actually played for both Bournemouth and Everton. Didn't appear for Bournemouth though, rather disappointing spell there, but made 5 appearances for Everton, so again, not a particularly notable career thus far in English football for Christian Atsu, but he's on the Newcastle wide left flank today. So Newcastle again retain possession. This time it's Isaac Hayden, the former Arsenal youth player, who can move the ball out, and it's gone all the way back to Elliott. Incidentally, Hayden, another, performed very well last season. Quite a meteoric rise for him. He really didn't see any chance of making the side at Arsenal, and quite sensibly moved on, as indeed many of the youth players do these days. And Isaac Hayden definitely making an impression here early on. As the ball's meanwhile with Toby Alderweireld, the Belgian centre-half for Spurs. Alderweireld again. So greetings if you just joined us. I'm Stefan, of course, reporting live for Stefanzine today, and this is once again only audio commentary, so apologies if you came here expecting otherwise. There is no picture, there's no live coverage by way of footage, there's only myself reporting on the game verbally. So hello and welcome, and just bringing you up to speed on proceedings here. Again, just having mentioned Christian Atsu some moments ago, the man formerly of Bournemouth and Everton, makes great ground down this left near side for the hosts, the Magpies, and they've won their first corner of the match here. Great industry shown on this occasion by Christian Atsu. So the first corner of the game for Newcastle United. And Jonjo Shelvey across as ever to take it. Let's see what he can do here. Goes short to Matt Ritchie. And the ball's recycled back to Isaac Hayden. Loops it in, but that's meat and drink really for Hugo Louis, the Spurs goalkeeper. That's an excellent throw out as well to find Christian Eriksen. What can he do here? Mounting a counter-attack promisingly. Christian Eriksen goes outside to Mr. Sissoko, but he's content really just to slow the play down, and Eriksen eventually foiled by the defender. Shouts for handball perhaps, but nothing doing there. And eventually, Eriksen finds the outside of the post, eventually just to bring up to speed once more with the play that developed there. Eriksen finding room to fire the shot across goal, but he sees his effort go just wide. But afforded too much room from Lascelles. It actually went through the defender's legs as it turned out, and that's, well, the first real opening you could argue for Spurs so far this match. Christian Eriksen seeing his shot go wide of the post for the visitors. So, hello and welcome. If you're just joining us, it's Stefan here once more, commentating on this match between Newcastle and Spurs at St James's Park for Stefan Zine. And by all means, like and subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying today's coverage. And once again, this is only audio coverage. There's no picture to be seen here, no footage to be seen. It's purely audio. So apologies if you were expecting otherwise, but this is what I can bring you at the very least today. Audio commentary, verbal commentary of the game between Newcastle and Spurs. So Ben Davies inside to Vertonghen and subsequently to Alderweireld, the Belgian international. So once again, if you just joined us, this is Stefan reporting for Stefan Zine, live commentary on happenings at St James's Park between Spurs and Newcastle United. Ben Davies outside to Musa Sissoko, and he's having to check back and play in the Welshman again, and they'll switch the point of emphasis as over here. Spurs out through the back four, Alderweireld on the ball, and this time he actually goes long with a diagonal pass inside, looking for Dele Alli, who's seen his run halted by the centre half of Sales, and Christian Atsu again on the left flank can do something here perhaps. It's an excellent centre. Wow, just for a moment there you felt Christian Atsu had run the ball too far, but he showed a great turn of pace initially to really leave young Kyle Walker-Peters for dead, and in fact it was Musa Sissoko doing the covering after, in fact, Kyle Walker-Peters was left stranded upfield in that ensuing counter-attack from the hosts, and we had to the visitors had to resort to clearing the ball as Ben Davies considered the corner, which has since swung in by Lejeune here. So another promising break for Newcastle, this time unrewarded, but they retain possession here, and Atsu might be in indeed again, but this time covering as perhaps he should have been just moments ago. Kyle Walker-Peters, again, not to be confused with the former Spurs man. This is the new youngster deputising at right fullback this afternoon. Kyle Walker-Peters, a lovely slide challenge to thwart the lively-looking Ghanaian here, Christian Atsu. So another corner, the third of the match now on my count for the hosts. Certainly growing into the game over the last 10 minutes or so. John Shelvey with the long raking pass across the face of goal in customary fashion. Of course, John Shelvey, an excellent pass for the ball. For me, his right peg is just about as good as a certain David Beckham. And he, meanwhile, leaves the throw here to Kieran Clark, deputising at left back himself, after we saw Paul Dummett having to go off just moments into the match through injury. So, Isaac Hayden looking to latch on. Oh, he slips there momentarily, Kieran Clark. In fact, it's Matt Ritchie on the ball. Kieran Clark with the throw this time. So this time Dwight Gale going back to the Irishman, who can get a second bite of the cherry with a cross perhaps there, but he's coughed up position needlessly. Only to see it retained here once more, and I'll just get my feedback here. Apologies for it dipping out. So Harry Kane this time can mount an attack. He's had a quiet first half so far. Of course, you'll all remember very well, I'm sure, 12 months ago, Harry Kane took a couple of weeks to get going. And on this occasion, he's received a booking. So I just spoke about the English international being rather anonymous, the England captain these days being rather anonymous thus far, but he's now conceded a needless foul after attempting to win the ball off the new signing Lejeune, who'd retrieved possession very capably under pressure from Kane, and that's a very frustrated tackle by the England internationals. We see a drinks break take place after 31 minutes here, so we've already seen half an hour elapse. It's been a game of few chances, but certainly Newcastle growing into proceedings across the last couple of moments. John Shelvey with a couple of chances to play in teammates from set pieces particularly, and Lejeune, the man who was clattered by Kane just moments ago, has stayed on the floor, and that's actually paved the way inadvertently for the drinks break. It wasn't a scheduled one. It was merely a break in play. So Lejeune, the Frenchman, the new signing, is reduced to a watching brief, at least for now, laid flat on his back. Now he's, again, looking pretty afflicted here. I'm sure Newcastle won't want to lose a second defender in just the space of half an hour, if that, so early on in this game. But that looks like it might indeed be the case. Rafa Benitez, I'm sure, will be resigned to that fact as we see the replay of the tackle involving Kane. The coming together between Kane and Lejeune did not look good at all. So once again, Harry Kane booked for that challenge on Lejeune, and eventually the new Newcastle signing does get back to his feet, and of course Newcastle fans will hope that he'll be able to continue. But for now, he's hobbled off the pitch, so for now, the hosts are restricted to just 10 players, but Atsu's done his best to try and counter that with another fresh flurry down the flank, and it's resulted in another corner. So this time Matt Ritchie, the Scottish international, across to take the resulting corner, the fourth of the game so far for Newcastle, who are starting to dominate proceedings here. As we just saw moments ago, Harry Kane needlessly booked for a very angry tackle on Lejeune, the since departed Lejeune, off the field of play through the resulting injury. But Lascelles can recycle the ball here and whip it back in, but he's not been able to do so effectively. And after the initial corner there, Newcastle unable to profit. And we see Chancellor Mbemba being ready here on the touchline by Rafa Benitez. After, wow, a very disappointing end to the game for Lejeune, the debutant. So, very disappointing indeed for Newcastle United. And just to bring you up to speed, if you are just joining us, 2 defenders already leaving the field of play for Newcastle so early on in the season, let alone the game, through injury. Both of them succumbing to rather needless challenges. In fact, sorry, just the latter one, the latter incident involving Lejeune and indeed Harry Kane, the England captain, after coming together. Initially it was Paul Dummett going off injured with a hamstring strain, but since then we've seen Lejeune go off through injury after that challenge, and another tackle coming flying, and this time from Kieran Clark, looking to thwart the young Kyle Walker-Peters, the deputy fullback, marauding down the flank for Spurs. That was actually very promising for the youngster, the furthest forward he's been all day, and he's won his side of corner, so it's really becoming a game all about corners. Now, who can convert the first, though? That's the big question. As Ben Davies is starting the Welshman, swings in the ball from the left side. With an, it's won by Vertonghen and cleared partially by Lascelles, but he's fouled. So a free kick for Newcastle United in their own penalty box after Lascelles were challenged in the resulting phase of play from the corner. Newcastle clearing eventually, as we see a shot of Mike Ashley. A man who's not been in the news at all lately, of course, as ever. Mike Ashley, the much talked about, much criticised Newcastle owner. So it remains 0 here after 35 minutes in the northeast. Newcastle 0, Spurs 0, and we've just reached the 36th minute to be precise. Spurs with both a settled and new look lineup, if you will, and the main reason being, of course, we see the young Kyle Walker-Peters make his debut at right back. So not to be mistaken with the former Spurs man Kyle Walker. This is very much a new, emerging young talent within the Spurs ranks, known as Kyle Walker-Peters, with a hyphen between Walker and Peters, of course, in his name. And again, this is becoming a theme of the first half. Newcastle sitting somewhat deep and allowing Spurs to come onto them. So we're seeing a lot of the ball being played across the back four between Vertonghen particularly and Belgian compatriot and Spurs colleague Vertonghen. Sorry, yeah, Alderweireld. So he's gone back again to Vertonghen on this occasion. In fact, it's really a triangle, if you like, between the three Belgian players there. Dembele again looking for that ball out of defence and anchoring the midfield. Moussa Dembele. This time it's gone out. Min Davis, the Welsh fullback, will take the throw. Of course, in the side, in the absence of Danny Rose, as ever, Ben Davis, and it looks like he indeed might remain there. We'll have to wait and see what happens over the coming weeks as the transfer reaches a close. But for now, just back to the action as we see Mbemba is felled, so he will receive a free kick. This time Ali remonstrating with the referee, and we seen after yesterday's match at Stamford Bridge that it's not always a good idea to be so forward and forthcoming with your rapport with the referee. Fabregas, of course, dismissed after sarcastically applauding the official during the game between Burnley and Chelsea. Dele Alli thinks better of continuing the discussion, let's say, with the referee. Now, so Elliott pumps the ball into the sky, and it's a chance for Dwight Gale to leap and attempt to win the ball. The smallest man instantly on the park, finding his feet and getting some good leverage there, but didn't quite win out on that occasion. But Newcastle have since recycled the ball, and will be able to now proceed out of defence. So just shy of 5 minutes before the interval, and a relatively patchy first half in terms of intensity. Owing no less to those stoppages in play, we saw two players succumb to injury, particularly Lejeune and Dummett for Newcastle. Two of the back four already having to leave the field of play, so quite disappointing for the hosts. But they've since brought on two players. First of all, Chancellor Mbemba, replacing the recently departed Lejeune, and early on in the match, after just 5 or so minutes, Paul Dummett, the Welshman, pulling up with muscle complaints. I believe it was a hamstring strain, so he's also departed early on, and he's been replaced by Lascelles. Ali on the ball now, and he's gone back to Moussa Sissoko, getting the nod today in the starting lineup. Kieran Clark will be able to clear easily though on the half volley, and he's pumped the ball really aimlessly, however, into the sky. And again, we see Alderweireld just able to bring the ball under control and slowly, in a calculated manner as ever, look for the ball out. But he's actually been pressed very well indeed by Dwight Gale on this occasion to see Newcastle retain the ball. Kieran Clark with the throw-in. So Kieran Clark inside, and well, that appeared to come off Moussa Dembele's hand, it must be said, the Belgian international. But play since continued, with this time Vertonghen the recipient of the ball from countryman Alderweireld. It's out to Ben Davis, and further out still to Sissoko. Eriksson inside, and that's a neat turn away from Isaac Hayden, the holding midfielder for Newcastle United, but he's had his cross blocked by the retreating former Arsenal man. So once again, Moussa Dembele on the ball. Alderweireld again in the opposition half, and he's finding plenty of room, and this time he's fed it into Eriksson, who can get a half yard here. Can surely cause consternation, and that's a bit better. Wow, a ferocious attempt. A very clever effort from Christian Eriksen on the turn, on the snapshot, trying to catch Elliott off guard by surprise, but he's seen his effort saved rather comfortably, it must be said, in the end by Elliott. But well, we've seen him do that time and time again. Christian Eriksen looking for that point of difference, looking to make something out of nothing, and he's just got that presence in mind to do just that. But on this occasion, Elliott equal to it. So Jonathan Shelvey can emerge with the ball out from the back forward. He's been dispossessed, and it's Moussa Sissoko retreating, and Ali since retrieves the ball and has a pop at goal himself. So another who's been rather quiet this first half so far, Dele Alli, but he had an effort there which had a few on this ground certainly concerned. So, well, is he offside? Yes. No, he's not. He remains onside. Meanwhile, Newcastle United mounting an attack of their own. It's Dwight Gale who's... In fact, it's Manquillo who's been able to retain the ball and bring Atsu eventually into play. Christian Atsu on the other flank, left flank, and he's come inside a neat little nutmeg inside the Spurs fullback, Kyle Walker-Peters. That was brilliant from Christian Atsu, like I say, the man who was so disappointing at Everton and Bournemouth, but he's been afforded a new lease of life here at Newcastle United, and he's looked their best player in this first spell, it must be said. Kieran Clark, meanwhile, with a nutmeg of his own. Inside, well, through the legs of Moussa Dembele, and Spurs can eventually clear, but it's only gone to John Shelvey with a neat bit of ball control on the chest, and he's been able to release Manquillo, the Spaniard, on loan from Atletico Madrid, of course. So if you're just joining us, we're just a couple of moments out from the interval. It remains 0-0 here between Newcastle and Spurs, so Tottenham Hotspur opening their account, having not made a single signing so far this season, but let's not get too hung up on that just for now. So it remains 0-0. It's been, like I say, a rather indifferent performance from either side, really. But, of course, partly the reason for that, we've seen a lot of stoppages across this first half. Certainly for the neutral, rather disappointing feature of proceedings thus far. But with the interval just moments away, I'm sure things are set to change in the second spell. So it all remains to be seen, but it's a great day all the same here at St James's Park in Newcastle. So hopefully the football will follow suit. Meanwhile, Jose Perez, with a great bit of skill, he's eluded 2 or 3 players under the attention of Davis and Vertonghen, it was, I believe. Jose Perez, the Spaniard, who again hasn't seen much of the ball across the opening 45, but that was promising, making something out of nothing, as we just saw prior to that. Eriksen doing the same at the other end. This time, the dribbling skills of Jose Perez enough to elude a couple of players, but he was thwarted shortly thereafter. And meanwhile, this is Isaac Hayden on the ball, and Matt Ritchie, the Scot. So speaking of former Bournemouth players, Matt Ritchie is one of them. He certainly was a lot more established at the club than Atsu was, and they now find themselves on the same side in what's really an established Newcastle 11 on the evidence of last season. Not too many changes, of course, the exception of Manquillo and the since departed Lejeune, the centre-half who's gone off through injury as of about 15 minutes ago. So Eriksen again can line one up, but this time that's tame. Eriksen reverting to type and cutting rather a frustrated figure late on in this first half. Christian Eriksen forcing him to go for those long range strikes out of frustration more than anything, instead of looking to play a teammate in. But he's certainly one who's capable, if anyone. So here he is again, coming rather deep to receive the ball, and it's Alderweireld looking to pan wide. He finds Kyle Walker-Peters on this near side for Spurs, and again Alderweireld this time had to go all the way back to Hugo Lloris, the French captain, of course, and Spurs captain, who's come out to Ben Davis at left back. Sissoko again with that customary fending off of the player, getting his arm in front of the man. And Moussa Dembele now recycling the ball for the visitors. Christian Eriksen again so deep, almost side by side alongside Moussa Dembele, and it's this time Dele Alli, and he does appear to be clipped. Yep, that was what seemed like an innocuous challenge, but all the same contact off the ball there by Isaac Hayden, the former Arsenal man. Very much in the Vernon Anita role these days for Newcastle United after a successful campaign last time out. So a free kick here instantly late on. We've already entered one of the 3 minutes of added time here in the first half, at the end of the first half, between Newcastle United and Spurs, and it's Christian Eriksen lining up the free kick here. What can he do? We just spoke about those long-range efforts he's known for, and he's already attempted a few today to no avail. But from a set-piece situation with a bit of time to set of sights. Maybe we can see his fortune's about to change. So let's just wait on this here. This time he goes for, well, he's looking to play the ball inside, and might have been better served actually go for the shot as it turned out. Opted not to. Eriksson looked to feed in the player instead, feed in the teammate, but it's since broken for Newcastle promisingly, and Dwight Gale is forced wide, but that's it. Fantastic centre. But equally, a very capable and confident take from Hugo Lloris, with Jonjo Shelvey of all people charging down, herring down through the middle after a neat breakaway from, rather stemming from that Christian Eriksen free kick, which came to nothing, and instantly in riposte, Newcastle breaking at pace, but Dwight Gale only saw his cross finding Hugo Lloris after Jonjo Shelvey did challenge for it. It was nonetheless a very promising attack, and it's not looked too bad here for Newcastle across this first half. Certainly exciting going forward, and seemingly, well, largely untroubled at the back, albeit you do suspect they'll come into question again across the second half as we see another free kick, a deep-lying free kick, to be dispatched here by Kieran Clark for the hosts, with men pushed all the way forward. He's just about on the halfway line, Kieran Clark, and he launches it forward. This time, Dwight Gale can get goal side, and he goes down under the challenge, but really there was never any hint of a cry for a penalty. And with that brings the end of proceedings, at least for now, across this first half. And like I say, it remains 0-0 between Spurs and Newcastle United. So what can we expect to see across the latter part of the match? Another 45 plus minutes to come, and it's been a good match. Like I say, had it not been for those stoppages in play, namely the injuries we saw early on to Dummett, and later on with the injury suffered by the new signing Lejeune. In fact, in my highlight reel, it really characterises, or rather serves to sum up the first half there. 0-0, a game of fouls, injuries, stoppages and free kicks. So, not perhaps the game for the neutral. And again, just to remind you, this is merely audio coverage. There's no actual live video coverage or visual footage of the match at St James's Park. So I hope this does suffice in compensating, at least in part, for that. It's the best we can do for now. So I'll be giving you, or bring you rather, the second half as it develops shortly. But for now, I'm going to take a wee break across this 15-minute spell. Thanks for joining, and we'll be back soon. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Stefan here once more from Stefan's, and if you're just joining us for this live coverage between Newcastle and Spurs from St James's Park, hello and welcome. I just had my drink of water for the half-time interval. Only water, I can promise you that. And again, welcome if you've just joined us. I am certainly enjoying the game so far that's unfolded at St James's Park, albeit a game characterised so far by fouls and niggly incidents and free kicks, set pieces, and the like, which have all come to nothing, so it remains nil, like I say, but it's been an absorbing match all the same, and it's great to see Newcastle back. They certainly look like a side who have really kicked on after last season, and that successful title-winning campaign, albeit only the championship title. So I'll be back in just over 5 minutes or so. Stay tuned. Welcome back, guys. Stefan here from Stefanzine, and I'm just about to bring you all up to speed on the second half once it does indeed begin, just moments away. The second half between, of course, Newcastle United and Spurs this Sunday afternoon in Newcastle, of course. So we'll have that with you very shortly. Right, so thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm Stefan here once again from Stefanzine. We're just about to bring you the beginning of the second half between Spurs and Newcastle United, live from the home of the Magpies. Newcastle United, of course, St James's Park. So very shortly we'll be resuming with the match itself and my live verbal voice commentary. I'm afraid it's not, there's no picture to be seen here. It's simply verbal commentary from myself this afternoon. So thanks for joining us, and shortly we'll be with you back with the second half. Right, so thanks again once for joining me. It's Stefan reporting today, or rather commentating on today's match between Newcastle United and Spurs from St James's Park. Welcome to Stefanzine, the channel on YouTube where you'll find football opinion, impartial commentary, and so much more. And as I've just mentioned there, you can find me on Twitter under the same name, so simply at Stefanzine, which is Stefanzine. So Stefan is my name, with zine on the end, like a magazine, a zine, of course. Now, I just asked who you guys support. Obviously, looks like we've got some Spurs fans on board here, so welcome to the match. Let me know what you think thus far. and what you think indeed of the new right back, Kyle Walker-Peters, deputising for Kieran Trippier, of course, and not to be confused, as ever, with Kyle Walker himself. Right, so welcome back. I'm going to bring you guys back into proceedings by way of commentary here. So we've just seen the second half get underway. And as you can hear, I'm slurping on my chocolate smoothie here to keep me going. So on the Sunday afternoon in the northeast, it remains Newcastle 0, Spurs 0, and already a chance to pop a goal for Harry Kane. Of course, booked in that first half. So, we remain at 0-0 after half-time, like I say. A match, a few chances, but certainly quite a few set pieces for either side, particularly Newcastle growing into the game across the latter part of that second half. So all the way back to Ugo Lloris, and we see Jan Vertonghen, a spot of bother, have declare his lines at short notice there. And the ball's eventually gone out of play, so it's a Spurs throw. Off the Spaniard Javier Manquillo. So back with the action here, Mr. Sissoko making a ground down the left flank, and he feeds in Ben Davis. His cross comes to nothing. But Spurs very much in the ascendancy here. They obviously had some stern words from Pochettino at half-time. Christian Atsu though can break. Meanwhile for Newcastle United, he's since been thwarted by Dyer, and that's a... That's a heavy back pass, but Lloris did well to mop up at the back and resolve any hint of a loose ball. So hello and welcome if you're just, if you're just indeed joining us. At St James's Park here, it remains 0-0 between Newcastle and Spurs. And the early kickoff this Sunday in the Premier League. Oh, and apologies for the delay in keeping up to speed. Now, just returning to the action though, unbelievably, I'm just piecing together what's taken place in the time I was gone just momentarily there, and it appears that Jonjo Shelvey has been dismissed for a straight red card. Indeed, that looks like the case. So let me just have a... So it's Dele Alli who's come together with... Oh, he's just... Oh, well, a bit cynical to say the least from Jonjo Shelvey. albeit we've seen worse. So Dele Alli refusing to give the ball back to his England colleague in Jonjo Shelvey, at least his compatriot in Jonjo Shelvey. And in his frustration, Jonjo Shelvey has trodden on the foot of Dele Alli. Which has resulted in him receiving a straight red card. So, well, this is potentially a game changer, a real match changer for the hosts. And, well, it looked harsh, but in fairness, that's disappointing from Shelvey. He knew full well what he was doing there, to step across Dele Alli and trod quite deliberately on his foot, albeit he probably thought he disguised it at the time. Anyhow, so Isaac Hayden making progress, and we instantly in that passage of play preceding that just saw a chance for Newcastle, which came to nothing, but it remains to be seen what they can do with 10 men here. You'd anticipate that the odds are really stacked against them, but you never know. Perhaps it could galvanise them, as we see meanwhile Moussa Sissoko, the former Magpie, breaking with the ball here. He's got acres of space to run into. He's got Kane breaking free on the right, peeling off the defender. But rather disappointingly, it comes to nothing. Moussa Sissoko careless in possession there and indecisive in what to do. But the ball's since been recycled, and Christian Eriksen again from deep can look to probe and find a ball. This time he goes wide to Walker-Peters. Who goes back inside to find the Dane, and Dyer will find Sissoko. Sorry, Dembele. Dembele again will look to go wide. It's Dyer instantly into Ali, and then out wide to Walker-Peters, who can find a bit of room himself. The young fullback doesn't want to take on his man though, and opts instead to go back to Eriksen. That's suddenly fallen through to Harry Kane, who onside has had his effort thwarted. Well, just again bringing you up to speed here. So Harry Kane with a first real chance of goal. This is a snapshot. He was onside. The ball ricocheted through to him rather kindly, and looking to profit instantly on the half turn. The English international sees his effort saved. It was flush, in fairness, at the goalkeeper Elliott, but well, that's an opportunity on the evidence so far of this game. If any, that's one of the better ones. And it's Harry Kane of all people who couldn't convert from all of 6 yards out straight at the goalkeeper. And really, by his standards, he'll be aggrieved at that, for sure. So, meanwhile, we see a throw for Ben Davis on this near side. Yes, Ben Davis, the Welsh fullback, deputising, of course, at left back for Danny Rose. But inside, he said, well, that's a really lazy touch. A touch of beach football, if you like, from Eric Dyer. Just putting the ball out of play instantly. And as we look again at the red card incident before me here. So, in fact, we're looking rather at a challenge. A late tackle from Matt Ritchie just off camera just now, conceding the foul to gift possession again back to Spurs. But just to bring you up to speed again, just moments ago we saw Jonjo Shelvey sent off, dismissed with a straight red card after a very cynical stomp on the ankle of Dele Alli, needlessly as well. So it wasn't simply a coming together, it wasn't a late challenge. Dele Alli, in fact, was cradling the ball, refusing to give it back to the Newcastle man, and in his frustration, coming across the England international, Jonjo Shelvey just so happened to decide to trod on Dele Alli. So he's since seen his name and number taken and has made a long walk down the tunnel, seeing red to match the red mist which descended over him moments prior to that. So Jonjo Shelvey bringing his side down to 10 men here. And it's frustration for Benitez. Harry Kane, meanwhile, just moments ago having the best chance really of the match, it must be said. From point-blank range, was unable to convert after being put through via a ricochet. And credit to Elliott off his line to thwart the England international, but all the same, great opening all of a sudden for Kane on the half volley and the half turn, but unable to convert on this occasion. So it's Kyle Walker's been mounting an attack of his own down the right flank. He's come inside as ever again. He's not really looked to go around this man at all, given half a chance in this game, which is perhaps understandable. Making your debut, you're a little bit tentative and hesitant and not wanting to be too selfish, as we just see again the incident. And well, looking at the replay myself just now, that's definitely deliberate from John Shelvey, who's, as we just see the crowd's reaction again in shock to that red card dismissal for John Shelvey after once again stamping, if you like, on the ankle of Dele Alli. Spurs fans will hope that's not a long-term injury for Alli, and it appears not, since he does continue for now. He's remained out there on the pitch and doesn't seem to be hobbling or walking gingerly at all, so that's promising, at least for Spurs fans, in the aftermath of that incident. And again, really needless from Shelvey, and well, if you're Rafa Benitez, you're just going to hope and pray that that does not cost you the match, because with the best chunk of the second half rather, still to pan out here, that could be quite a telling moment in the match. Meanwhile, it's Dembele out to Eric Dyer. Spurs again in the ascendancy here. And he's looked for Alderweireld again advance, and he can find Kyle Walker-Peters out on the near side, the far side rather, the right flank, but he again opts to turn back. Kuznetsov covering very well, dropping into that left fullback position almost. Kuznetsov, the wide left-sided player. So once again, it remains 0-0 here between Spurs and Newcastle United from St James's Park, but no shortage of incident, particularly in the second period thus far, as we see, meanwhile, off the ball, Ayoze Perez succumbing to injury. So it's a late tackle coming in. I believe it was Eriksson there. That's a very rash coming together. So apologies for the delay just there, but I can assure you the score has remained unchanged. It sits at 0-0 here between Spurs and Newcastle United at St James's Park. But no shortage, like I say, of incident across the last 5 to 10 minutes or so, as we see Elliott, the goalkeeper, completely taken out there by Mr. Sissoko, the former Newcastle United favourite, rather unceremoniously ploughing into his former colleague. And substitution, meanwhile, imminent this time for Spurs, which sees that man we just mentioned there, Moussa Sissoko, the former favourite here at Newcastle United, the Frenchman, departing, making way for Son Heung-min, who's who was so lethal last season with the South Korean, of course. So he's just come on just now for Moussa Sissoko. So the ball's thrown out by Elliott, and it's retained though by Spurs, and those long legs of Dele Alli's will gather up the ball, and he looks to go around 1 and 2, and well, almost got round the second player there, but he recovered well there. I believe it was a retreating Kieran Clark, who plays it through to Dwight Gale with an instant pass down the line, but he's unable to latch onto that this time, the former Crystal Palace player, Dwight Gale. And again, we see Mr. Dembele, as ever, coming from deep and just walking the ball out slowly and surely, always looking for that pass, always deliberating on the ball in customary fashion. Likewise, Dyer looking to penetrate slowly and surely. And again, we see Dembele. This time he looks to go around a player or two, and he's come back inside. Hon caught unawares, though, and has to check his run to retrieve possession. Ali coming deep again, but that's a bit better from Ali. Into Walker Peters. That's a lovely ball. That's a great ball this time from Walker Peters. The first time cross across the deck. And he's now played Eric Dyer down the line with an even better ball, arguably. But, well, it's not quite panned out. Shelvey not ready to receive on the far post. You didn't expect that coming. That's such ferocity from Eric Dyer, the England international. So we remain at 0-0, but again, plenty of incident in the second half, and Spurs definitely growing into the game with that extra player. So with the additional man, 11 men as opposed to 10. After we saw Jonjo Shelvey not too long ago dismissed for stamping on the ankle of Dele Alli. So the game definitely hotting up quite nicely here, and I'm sure before long we'll see some sort of attack bring either of these sides into the lead, and most probably that's going to be Spurs, but let's not jinx it either way. So Alderweireld back to Vertonghen. And out to Ben Davies. Back inside to Eric Dyer. Again anchoring the midfield alongside Moussa Dembele. The both of them love to come deep, and Pochettino certainly giving them license to do that. But so far they've been frustrated, unable to really move forward having done that. And even Eriksen himself, though further advanced in front of those two, Dyer and Dembele, has had to again come deep, but that's a better ball, and that's 1-0. Wow, out of nothing. Quite unbelievably, I just spoke of a frustrated Eriksen, but he's managed to pick up the pass, and wow, straight away, there is the goal. As the crowd stunned here at St James's Park, bringing you back up to speed with what's just transpired. So a lovely clip. In fact, it was Dyer. Well, that's the ball of the day so far, really. So Kane exchanging. In fact, it is Eriksen. I was correct first time round. Dele Alli pouncing. Oh, that's lovely. Well, that really is truly an impudent touch from Ali after Eriksen, with a similarly nonchalant through ball, was able to release the England man, and that's 1-0 to the visitors. So there you go. As expected, perhaps, before the start of play, before a ball was even kicked, Spurs going in front, albeit they've had to wait an hour into this one. And it's Dele Alli on 60 minutes who makes the breakthrough. So there you go. I just spoke of Christian Eriksen being frustrated in that slightly more advanced role ahead of Dembele and Dyer, but this time he's managed to wriggle out of space, put through a lovely through ball, a little clip just over the back two of Newcastle, Lascelles and Clark, and converting handsomely as a result was Dele Alli, as ever coming into it with those long legs, that lovely gait of his, that lovely stride, coming in late for those clinical runs, and he's able to convert to put Spurs 1-0 ahead here over Newcastle. So it's been a long time coming perhaps, but it's finally come for Spurs. A long overdue first goal for the season for them. As we meanwhile see Ali feeding it through Eriksen, returning the favour. In fact, it was Kane, but Eriksen unable to convert again. That's really a chance for the Dane. So 1-0 to the visitors. Newcastle goalless themselves here, and rather worryingly, they'll be looking back, of course, on that incident involving Jonjo Shelvey and the dismissal of the English international. And, well, if you're a Spurs fan, you'd just be happy that Ali's managed to stay on the pitch and he wasn't too hurt after coming together with Shelvey in the incident, which saw him indeed sent off. So there you have it, 1-0 to Spurs after 61 minutes here at St James's Park. The goal on 60 minutes itself after Christian Eriksen put through a delightful, delicious through ball through to Dele Alli, who converted handsomely with a trademark late run, or at least trademark run, into the box, eluding the defenders and putting it past Elliott in the Newcastle goal. So, hello and welcome if you are indeed just joining us. It is now 1-0, incidentally, to Spurs, the visitors at St James's Park here, and it's already been a very eventful second half, in stark contrast to the first, as we see the sending off to Shelvey, reducing the home side to 10 men and to their cost, or it's come rather at a cost, having just conceded the first goal of the match, scored by the visitors, and Dele Alli, namely, who's on the ball now with a neat step over, and he comes back inside to Ben Davies. Well, he's fouled off the ball there after releasing it. So Spurs going into the match. They've certainly got a foothold in proceedings here now, and they're really camped inside the Newcastle half. As you can imagine, it's really a case of damage limitation for the hosts, having been reduced to 10 men, and you can quite easily see here, and of course, apologies at home, you won't be able to see the picture itself, you guys, but from what I can see here, Newcastle very much camped in their own half, and they look pretty reluctant to come out. Dwight Gale is supposed to be the man furthest forward for the hosts, but he's having to come all the way back into, well, past the centre circle in his own half, and try to defend from the front, if you can call it that. So, Newcastle, like I say, it's a case of damage limitation, but they'll be itching to score as well. I mean, Rafa Benitez, knowing him, will not be happy, but will trust all the same that his side can break at some point to really punish the visitors. So the ball, meanwhile, here is cycled out to Vertonghen, and he'll find Ben Davies on the wide left flank. Can he feed through a telling ball? It's Hyun Soo Min. This time out to Kyle Walker-Peters, the deputy right fullback for Spurs. That's another telling run from the young fullback. Did very well there. Knows perhaps he should have pulled it back sooner, but has nonetheless won the corner for Spurs, who have certainly grown in stature across this second spell, and will look to build upon their slender advantage now at 1-0. Dele Alli not too long ago scoring for the visitors to separate the two sides there at St James Park. And it's Eriksson again with a looping outswinger, looking to find a colleague, but it's Lascelles away. In fact, it was Isaac Hayden. So there we have it, Dele Alli separating the two sides with that strike, the England international, after long spells, particularly in that first half where he just didn't look in the game at all. But as we just get a glimpse of the goal once more via replay, and once again brought to the attention, or rather the skill of Eriksson is brought to my attention. A lovely through ball with an imputed touch. First time controlled finish from Dele Alli. That's really class. It truly is. A throwback to last season, very much so, and even the season before that. Those two combining so well with that telepathic understanding. The type of goal you typically see at White Hart Lane, incidentally. The two of them combining so clinically. It never really looked in doubt, in fairness, once you saw Ali wrap his left boot around that. So 1-0 to Spurs, and it's rather disappointingly becoming a very one-sided match here, if you're of Newcastle persuasion. As Spurs growing increasingly into proceedings, and they just need to keep the ball. But the moment I say that, Newcastle able to mount somewhat of a counter-attack here, and Dwight Gale, albeit he's been pushed wide, he's looking to take on young Kyle Walker-Peters, forced back to Kieran Clark, deputising at fullback incidentally after the injury to Paul Dummett early on in this match, and well, Kieran Clark not releasing the ball at all quickly. meaning he's had to settle for a throw-in. Instantly the attack petering out there, having just begun really for Newcastle, as we just see a shot of a very frustrated Rafa Benitez. But meanwhile we see the ball spread out wide. Well, I just commented on that initial counter-attack petering out or tapering out very prematurely for Newcastle, but they recycled the ball from the subsequent throw very quickly out to the right flank, and then it was Manquillo, the Spaniard, with a great centre, but it's since been seen to by the Spurs back four, and it's out for a goal kick. So, again, coming out of the back patiently and in a very calculated manner, Spurs almost walking into the Newcastle half, each player, each centre half. So Alderweireld to Dyer and Dembele now on the ball, the Belgian, who always seems to have all the time in the world on the ball, doesn't he? He's got a very deliberate style. And that's neat from Ali, a 1-2 exchange, a lovely flick on and inside. Suddenly it's a chance and it's 2-0. Wow. We just seen the first goal converted, and it's the fullback. And apologies for the noise cutting out just now, but well, again, the crowd stunned here at St James's Park, but we see, in keeping with the run of play, very much so, a neat flick initially from Dele Alli, and although that didn't come to anything, the ball fell fortuitously to Christian Eriksen, who miscontrolled himself, but the ball fell very invitingly into the path of an oncoming Ben Davies, who with his right foot, his weaker foot, just slides the ball home. He just kind of ran onto it at pace, and from all of probably 10 yards out, if that, he's able to slot past Elliott. So that's the first goal of the season for, of all people, Ben Davies, who, had it not been for the Danny Rose debacle of recent days, might not have been in the side at all. So there we go. The Welsh fullback Ben Davies scoring the second goal here for Spurs at St James's Park, and now this is becoming all but academic for the hosts in terms of the dynamic of the match. They're definitely looking second best here, and Spurs now very much accomplished. They've certainly got a firm foothold in this match, and Ben Davies able to profit after a neat 1-2 between Ali and Kane. Christian Eriksen inadvertently coming onto the ball before miscontrolling himself, but actually in doing that was able to assist Ben Davies with coming onto the ball and subsequently slotting home the second goal of the afternoon to see Spurs take the lead here. Wow. Just wow. I mean, it was an attack out of nothing really, as we just started to see subtle signs of Newcastle revival. They were able to mount a couple of counter-attacks themselves, but with the latest one reduced to a goal kick, or rather seeing itself come to only a goal kick, the subsequent attack from Spurs saw them score. So there we have it. It's a 2-0 at St James's Park between Spurs and Newcastle United. So the visitors looking very accomplished now, looking like the Spurs of last season, if of course in the first half they looked perhaps anything but. Anyhow, so Moussa Dembele on the ball. Again, very deep, and well, there's, if we're completely honest, few signs of life in this Newcastle side now, reduced to 10 men, and they look very frustrated. Yes, they're managing to retain their shape and remain disciplined in defending. They are sitting very deep, and it's always the sign of a dejected team, isn't it? However dependent you might be, or expectant at the chance of at some point getting an opportunity to break on the counter-attack, but it doesn't look all that forthcoming right now, does it? It really looks like a formality that Spurs will go on to see this one out, albeit they've still got another quarter of an hour to do so. And well, just as I speak there, Eriksen again along the deck, and it slides it unerringly into the path of Harry Kane with a diagonal run inside the pocket, but he's unable to get his foot onto the end of it, as it's gathered quite comfortably in the end, as it turns out, by Elliott. So Isaac Hayden, who's been very quiet in the second half, the former Arsenal man, And that's disappointing from him. Just as I bring the man to your attention there, he just put the ball straight out of play there, and well, Newcastle all over the shop. It really must be said. Now playing, of course, with 10 men. Manquillo just seeing a square ball, or rather errant ball from Isaac Hayden sail over the touchline, disappointingly. And Spurs again, as ever. Moussa Dembele must have it about 100 touches in the second half alone. Moussa Dembele in front of their back four. This time, whoa, great defensive header away by the retreating fullback. I believe that was Manquillo covering nicely in the centre for Newcastle. As Matt Ritchie, meanwhile, off the ball. It goes down under the challenge of Ali, I believe it was. And, well, that's an early release. So, Route 1 football from Newcastle, but this time Dwight Gale, who's, again, the smallest man really on the pitch, unable to latch onto that. He really didn't have a chance, in all honesty, against Vertonghen, at least on that occasion, in the air. So, Eric Dyer in front of the back four, one of the men in front of the back four. We just commented on Moussa Dembele, who seems to have all the time in the world when he is on the ball, and in the second half alone must have had at least 3-4 dozen touches. Kyle Walker-Peters, meanwhile, out on the snare side on the right flank, and he'll feed it back inside to Alderweireld. Ben Davis, the goal scorer. Now, that's a neat ball from Alderweireld, releasing Walker-Peters, but just too much weight on the pass. An incisive through ball from Alderweireld, and again, really symptomatic of the space afforded in the centre of midfield for Spurs. They can almost touch the edge of the area, most of those fullbacks coming forward, it seems at times. Certainly gaping holes, and holes needing to be plugged in the middle of the park there for Newcastle, who are sitting instantly very, very deep, as we see the introduction of the new man from Borussia Dortmund. I believe this is a loan signing, and a Spaniard at that, playing under Benitez. Merino has come on to replace very, very frustrated Dwight Gale, it must be said, on today's showing. Albeit not down to his own doing, really just a case of not having much of a chance to get a chance to turn around on players. Anyway, Merino looks an exciting acquisition. One of a select few signings these last couple of weeks for Newcastle United. But he's on loan from Borussia Dortmund, so certainly in terms of pedigree, you can't really argue with that if you're a Newcastle fan, to be fair. And we'll see how he does, but he's not being able to contain Moussa Dembele, who just goes around him with ease. Just to bring up to speed with that change, it looks like Merino's going to sit in midfield as a holding midfielder at that. And we'll see if he can contain the likes of Dembele, and particularly Eriksen going forward for Spurs, because he really is the danger man alongside Ali. Kyle Walker-Peters again seeing the ball, and this time Matt Ritchie wants to show him inside, but affording him too much room, and it's fallen to Eric Dyer. Well, Eric Dyer this time. So the England international with a chance out of nothing. Another snapshot, and this is what's happening. It's really been a feature of the second period. The ball breaking this time kindly for Dyer with a long-range effort. They've just been afforded far too much room from in and around the edge of that penalty area, have Spurs. So that's could come at the to the detriment of the home side, if it hasn't already, at 2-0. So I'm sure Newcastle fans will just be praying that Merino can somehow help his side settle here, having just come off the bench. Here's Chancellor Mbemba, and that's a neat touch from Merino back to his goalkeeper Ali at this time, and he looks to want to receive the ball again. Here is the new acquisition, just sitting in front of the back four, as indeed that holding midfield player, and looks quite prepared to come and receive, but they really need to go long. You'd suspect increasingly here, it's again the high press from Spurs really disabling any sort of chance of coming out at ease for Newcastle, but they do manage to get it wide out here to Manquillo, who swung a neat ball inside, but it's come to nothing, as we see Moussa Dembele again mount an attack deep from inside his own half. What can he muster up? Well, that's a neat interception, in fact, from Marino, who's played it. Oh, that's a great ball over the top this time. Looking for Christian Atsu, the former Everton man, and wow, that was a telling pass from the new signing from Dortmund, as I've touched upon. Marco Marino looking to play in Christian Atsu on the diagonal, but rather speculative ball, as it must be said. Mikel Marino. So Alderweireld can again walk out of the back four with the ball, as ever. This time opts to go out wide to Ben Davis, and in all honesty, the game now taking on a rather pedestrian feel, at least in the eyes of Spurs. They're really just looking to take the sting out of the game completely in this last 10 plus minutes, as we reach the 80th minute here at St James's Park. 2-0, of course, on the minute, or as it stands rather, to the visitors. So Spurs 2-0 up in this opening fixture. But Christian Atsu with another promising run. He's gone around about two players here and he gets his shot away. A very commendable effort indeed there from Christian Atsu, the Ghanaian. Wow, he did incredibly well to elude the first man particularly, and then cut back onto that left peg, having come inside, and he gets his shot across goal, but he's unable to beat the goalkeeper, of course, in Hugo Lloris, who hasn't had much to do, of course, at all, really, this second half. So had to be on guard once caught into action there, but nothing doing still for Newcastle. But that's easily probably the most promising moment we've seen all second half from them, particularly since going down to 10 men after John Joe Shelvey was just sent off. So a heads up on that if you are indeed just joining us. John Joe Shelvey sent off about 20 or so minutes ago, and in that time Spurs taking the lead initially through Christian Eriksen and subsequently through Dele Alli. So all to do for Newcastle here, albeit they've likely left it rather late without condemning them to defeat as such. It's definitely a case of damage limitation, it would appear, and much work to do. Certainly a steep task ahead, a tall order to expect them to retrieve or recover anything from this match at all. As we meanwhile see Elliott gather from errant, or rather misplaced through ball from Ali. And it's out wide this time to the left fullback in Karen Clark, and Atsu again can run it.